We're also live on Twitter. Recording. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Pete Caliendo, Baseball Outside the Box, and the International Sports Group, ISG Baseball, International Edition. We are on Sunday afternoon here in the beautiful city of Chicago, and we are bringing you to the beautiful country of Sweden, approximately Leksand, Sweden, a place I've been to a couple times. What a fantastic location. Thanks for joining us, everybody, here on Facebook, Zoom, and Twitter. We appreciate it. And currently, we are ready to rock and roll. Let me introduce our guest, Tony Klarberg. He is the Academy Director for the Sweden Baseball and Softball Academy. He's a national team coach with the senior national team third base coach. He's also an EBCA speaker to European Baseball Coaches Association. He spoke to a couple times. He goes back way back with us, all of us. Some of us here that are online. You got Pat Doyle and Richard Kanya, and you got Mark Full. You got a lot of ISG guys here. You got Christian. We're all on, and we appreciate you joining. We go back, and Tony goes back to the ABCA. Man, I can't remember the last time. I think he's been going there for like 30 years. Feels like 100. But listen, man, let's get going and rock and roll. And Tony, welcome, man, to the show. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Pete. It's an honor to be asked to be on the show. I've seen a few of the shows, at least. Some of them ends up in the middle of the night, so I miss those. But
yeah, we try to do them at 1 o'clock if we can, Central Time, for our friends in Europe and obviously in other parts of the country. But sometimes it happens to be in the evening in the U.S. But again, thanks, man. We really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, listen, let's get rolling. And if you got questions, remember, we love that our guests, everybody here, ask questions because we want, it's better that you get your question answered than mine. So, but let's just give a background. I know some of the guys know, Sweden baseball, but, for somebody, coming on that's never been there is wondering baseball. Well, Sweden's not baseball. It's all about hockey there. Right? As a matter of fact, I golf with some hockey players in Sweden. Tell us a little bit about the game there. Where, how many players you have, the league, how it's structured, and then we'll get into even more.
Yeah, so I guess it took off in the 60s more. It used to play back there was like an exhibition game in 1912, Stockholm Olympics, but that's way back, right? And so it sort of kicked off in the 60s, and it has grown since. We peaked, I think, during the 80s, 90s, then we dropped a bit. And right now we have about 800 licensed players, baseball players, and about 200 softball players. And it's from, I guess, whatever age down to 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So some kids start early, some start later, but it's a volunteer, and it's a club system like most sports in Europe. So it's volunteer, and local clubs run whatever teams they manage. So there's a top league with at the moment 8 teams, and then there's a second division, and then there's youth. It's not youth leagues, it's more like youth tournaments because we're so spread out. Usually clubs host youth tournaments, U15, U12, and then you travel to those tournaments and play. And that's basically the setup.
I got my Sweden horse here, by the way.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Kept it right next to me the whole time. Gives me good luck. Hey,
the dollar horse, yeah.
Dollar horse. Hey, let's talk about it's like Chicago, it snows there, obviously. I've been there where it's pretty cold. And, now you're getting outside. Tell us what's going on there as far as are kids allowed to practice? Are you starting to play? What's the goals here for the government and for the...
Yeah, so like everywhere else, there's Corona restrictions, even if I think the most part of the world thinks Swedes do it pretty differently. But we've been shut down. So no like senior sports or athletics are allowed. So 18 and under is okay, but there's restrictions on travel. So you can't travel more than 2 hours. But youth programs are fine. But for us, it limits us big time with 2-hour travel limit. So there's no youth tournaments. There's also a limit on a number of people in a group. So there's 50 is the maximum number of people that can be gathered. So that limits it too. So there's some practice games going on, like 18 and under, 15 under, 12 and under. But that's where they travel close and play. Two teams play each other. So no tournaments or nothing. And then last week, the authorities made a decision that it's going to be okay for like elite sports or men's or senior sports, men's and women, starting June 14th. And baseball, I think the preliminary date is June 21st. If they lift the travel restriction for 2 hours.
All
That's
right,
how.
Tony, one of the questions we have, and live on Facebook, if you have any questions, just type it at the bottom of the comments section. We're going to get the questions soon. But listen, one of the big questions is you've got to keep your players motivated. You got to keep them interested. They got to be doing something. What are you doing with your coaches to keep the players interested at home, working out, some type of programs, anything? So when, to prepare themselves, they got an idea when it's going to open up.
I think it's done individually. There is no national program at the moment.
What's Tony Klarberg doing?
Oh, Tony Klarberg. Oh, he's crazy. He's trying to stay updated all the time. It's 24/7. I try to relax. I'm actually getting better at relaxing and doing nothing, just watching TV or walk the dog or something.
If you were talking to your players, what would you tell them they should be doing?
Well, I try. We have had with the academy, which it's daily thing, except weekends. But we have a program set up. So I try to have them. There's still a few players that are on their own, but I have most of my guys are back at school here in Leksand at the academy. School is still online, but we can practice Monday through Friday, so that's good. But there's still guys that are on their own, so that's tough. But they have a program, but they also have their local club they work out with. So I don't want to interfere too much with what they're doing. So it's a give and take thing. You try to supervise, but not get too much involved. You don't want to direct the club coaches what to do and not to do. So
if you're speaking to the club coaches and you're speaking to the coaches, what's your concern? What's an area that you feel as academy director, possibly they need to be really focused on to make sure they're prepared when the kids come out and play?
Well, I think it's continuous. It's a daily thing, right? If you only work out 3 times a week, then that's not going to be enough. And that's sometimes I'm not going to say who or when. I have no idea. But sometimes there's clubs that practice 3 times a week, and if you want to play at a higher level and perform and stay healthy, then 3 times a week is not enough. And it has to be strength and conditioning, has to be mobility, flexibility, especially arms. So some type of arm program, arm care. I guess that's the most important. But there's probably going to be a lot of more hamstrings pulled this year. Hopefully not, but that's the risk if you're not under a program.
And we've got guys on Facebook, we've got guys on Zoom, Twitter, some of the Zoom guys, like Pat Doyle, he's been there, one of our ISG board of directors. He's been there many times. He's done a lot of work with the people there. So if you got anything to add or questions, guys, just feel free to type them in or let me know. But my questions I want to ask this part. If you were to categorize the importance of what players in Sweden need to work on the most, and when it comes to the game, the skills, where would you start? What would be the first thing, the second, third?
Oh, it's how we move, I guess, and game experience and how we move. That's 2 big things. And games is tough to handle in a bit, but I think we could and we should play more games, not too many, but play more games. And then we need to teach movement, agility, flexibility. That's I think that's what we need to start. And we're doing. There's like a program started a few years ago. They call it Sweden Youth Academy. It was the federation was part of it, and Andy Berglund, some of you probably know him, and Björn Johannesson, former national team player here in Sweden. They started that program and did that for a few years, and they really pushed agility and movement, and I think that's where we, and also throwing. That's a big thing when you're young. But I think movement. But it might be that the movement part also ties into the number of games that we don't play enough to learn to read the ball and get that game experience. So I don't know, but that's two areas where I think we need to look more into.
Explain, talk about the academy, because I know the academy started in 2006, started with 9 players. Now you're up to a lot more players than that. You've done a very good job. Explain a little bit how the academy works, and some of the things that you do in the academy to develop your players.
Yeah, so the history is we started in 2006. And as you remember, Pete, you came in 2006.
I think it was me and Donnie Freeman, right?
You and Donnie Freeman came in January 2006 in the cold winter, and we were going to start the academy in August of 2006, but it was not, we were just, it wasn't started yet. So in January 2006, we also had a meeting in Chicago, me and the other co-founder, Ola Sund, a local guy here, friend of mine, a former player. We sat down in Chicago with Pat Doyle and Jason Holowati from Major League Baseball. At the time, Pat Doyle was the envoy coordinator, and Jason was in charge of Europe and development. So, and we wanted to ask if we could use the logo on the website to be able to recruit players. And then we found out that there was a academy system in place already for Europe, and the Netherlands, Italy, France was going to start the same year, I think, and maybe Germany was already on board, but there was already a few countries involved in the system. So we got on board with that. So that was great. So, and then the system here in Sweden is that high school, grade 10 to 12, there is a special solution or setting for athletics. So you can have a high school grade 10 to 12 and have athletic programs where you put you arrange the school schedule so that you can have openings for practice. And so that's been in place in Sweden since the 70s. So we knew about that and asked the community of Leksand if they were willing to get this started. So they got that started, or we got that started in August 2006. We, like I said, we had nine players that first year. High school in Sweden is also, it's for free, so there's no fee for the credits or units you're taking. And then originally it wasn't a national program. What luckily we got players from all over the country to come, and that was a big thing early on. And then since then we've become a national program. We can recruit from all over the country. Yeah, and then I guess it's been growing ever since, and we try to recruit the players we think that can manage 3 years of school and practice. There's this academic component in this that a lot of times boys would like to be without, but that's called something else. I think it's called pro. But yeah, so they come for baseball most of the time, so we we try to have them fight through the academics too. And then yeah, since 2006, it's been growing. We're the baseball numbers have been going from like since then from 15 to around 20. So the past few years we've been around 20 baseball players in the program.
And we're going to talk about the development of the academy. I want to get to some questions. Before I do, here's the one thing I want to tie all this in with is, you know, you mentioned education. Education is important, obviously. You talk to most college coaches, you know, they want to know their educational background. They want to know, you know, I mean, I'd rather have a kid who's pretty smart than a kid that, you know, doesn't study or is not disciplined enough to study. But let's talk about the grassroots level, because you've got the academy where kids have a goal to go to, and then you're going to obviously mention, you know, how these guys travel to different colleges, how they get picked up by colleges, hopefully by pro ball one day. But talk about because you got to get the kids to play the game. Talk about how what kind of program you have to attract kids to play and how you keep them in the game.
I think most it's done locally, like the clubs do that recruiting work when they're, yeah, I would say about the ages 14 and down most of the times, or 15 and down, and it's done through schools. So I mean, those age groups, you attend schools when they have like activity days, or you invite schools to come to try. You handouts, pamphlets at schools to come to practice, to recruit. That's the biggest recruiting place. I think it's the schools, and then how you keep them. I think this game is totally different to any other sport. So let's try to make it fun, because I think it's a challenge. It's not like most other team sports. You can fight and just run. I mean, you can run for the soccer ball. You don't have to kick it. You just run and be a nuisance to the other team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hockey, you can go in and tackle and be a good player. And if you can't shoot, but if you can't hit in baseball, it's pretty tough. So I think it's a tough game to teach and have kids enjoy if they can't handle the hitting and the throwing. So it's demanding on the coaches.
So on that, I want to ask you, is you got a ton of experienced coaches here, way more experience than me. But one thing you said, and I agree with it. And the important, baseball sometimes cannot, you know, isn't as attractive because of the failure right away. So my question is, when you go to the schools, when the kids come to you, you know, you got to get them right away. You got to attract them right away. How do you do that? Because if you just play a baseball game, sometimes it could be pretty boring. They might say, well, you know what, you know, hockey, soccer, that's a lot more fun. I'm just going to go do that. How do you grab them?
Yeah. So the youth tournaments have they've arranged. So the rules is that there's no base on balls. So there's always going to be ball hit. So it's either if the pitching, if that doesn't work, it's going to be hitting off a tee, or a coach side toss the ball to the kid. And I think sometimes also the coach pitch. But we're taking away the coach pitch for the younger. They've started to pitch again. But if they can't manage to hit, there's a base on balls, they're not going to put the player on first base, and they're going to have him hit, so make the game more fun. And I think that's one of the keys. It's not going to make the game more enjoyable because we need to develop the pitching as well as the hitting and make it fun. So it's a tough challenge, I think, but I think they're on the right track.
Your good friend Richard Kanya, he says, is it true that floorball evolved in Sweden because baseball players brought over the wiffle balls? What's floorball? Is that hockey?
Yeah, it's
hockey with a ball?
it's hockey indoors, basketball court, a plastic, like a wiffle ball and a plastic stick, and you run in tennis shoes, and it's huge because I would say it's a simple game. It's easy to understand, and anyone can run and try to hit that ball. It's easy. It's not, you're not gonna, it's easy to understand. It's easy, so it's grown quite a bit.
You know, it's interesting too, because I've done a show with a good friend of mine who's an NHL hockey coach. He's one of the most creative, innovative coaches in the NHL when it comes to working with NHL players on skill development. And we talk a lot about cross training, you know, hockey. I know hockey's big in Sweden, but you and I were talking, there's a certain age where they don't play any more hockey. Do you see some of these kids that are coming from hockey in that extremely important developmental age between that, 7 and 12, you see better athletes coming to you?
Yeah, if you played other sports, it's so much easier to teach whatever movement or I mean attitude is one big thing. Hockey players are pretty tough, usually, and they've learned how to practice. They've learned to be on time. They've learned all these things that you don't have to teach. They know what it means to be an athlete most of the times. Um, but I think there's less. I would say when I used to play back in the 80s, 90s, there was back in the 80s at least, there was the teams I played with, both teams, we had like the guys played hockey in the winter and then baseball in the summer. They were allowed to, even if they were in their 18, 19, 20s, they were allowed to play hockey, not at the highest level, but they played a competitive sport in the winter and then in the summer. So you got that the game experience too. Like I think whatever sport you do, there's always a good thing you can bring into another sport, right? So the competitiveness in hockey is big when you play baseball too, because I think when I played, there was more guys that hated to lose than there is now. I don't know why, but maybe there was a cultural thing back then. But there was a lot of hockey players back then. It was.
And we might get into that too. You know, in hockey, I mean, the other part is they're skating, balance. You know, there's when they do a slap shot, there's balance there, hand-eye coordination, passing, anticipation, toughness. I mean, there's so much behind it. Joel Fuentes, he asks, this is a good one here because you see this in different countries. He asked Tony if they teach to win or to develop.
It's more focused on development and the process. But I think that's sort of the Swedish way in general. I think, like if you look at most athletes in Sweden that are, I mean, there's a ton of NHL players, right? Swedish, about 100, I think, in the NHL, and they know how to win. But I think it started with a process where you develop the players, and then you learn, then you push the winning thing later on when you're older. So it's the process it's the focus.
You know, I just want to everybody on Zoom, Twitter, and Facebook also welcome. I can't welcome everybody, but I want to welcome George Applebaum from Germany, the president of the EBCA, another great baseball mind. And this is what I love about the show. You know, I think, you know, we can learn so much from coaches all over the world. You know, we've got a lot of great coaches in the U.S., but we also have a lot of great coaches around the world. And that's why we're doing this, ISG and Baseball Outside the Box, simply because just to spread the word, there's a lot of great coaches out there. Here's another one. Mark Fuller asks, what are a couple of your most recent changes or additions to player development that you implemented over the last 2 years?
So the last 2 years, it's become more technical thing. I took a personal loan at the bank and bought the Rapsodos for hitting and pitching, and I got the blast sensors, and then since way back I have a high-speed camera. So that's been I wouldn't say not the focus, but I'm trying to learn how to use that wisely. So we haven't implemented it so much. I'm just trying to figure it out how to use it, because there's tons of information in there. I don't want to throw it at the kids, everything at one time. So I'm trying to figure it out before I actually start using it wisely. But that's one of the biggest changes. I would say, the past 2 years. And then, yeah, I think that's the biggest ones. And then lately, just this during this Corona times, I'm doing more motivational stuff. Like I have a Monday motivation video, and we talk about that. We have a weekly quote of the week or the word of the week, which they have to hand in like a response to me, what that word means to them or the quote means to them, and the video is to get them excited and motivated, of course. So yeah,
You
that's
know,
that.
earlier in the talk, you mentioned about game experience, you know, and I just started doing this a couple months ago, thinking about it with a couple teams that we have here. And that was, and I just wanted to add this, you know, we would put on a major league game on Zoom, and we would watch the ball game. And then I would then ask them questions during the game, you know, and have players respond, you know, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in this pitch count? What would you do to this hitter? You know, and I just thought about it. And the reason I bring it up is because you and I were talking, and I'm a big believer that we can learn from everybody around the world. But I also, in our classes, we also talk to our young coaches about, you know, it's about taking what you learn and also trying to make it better. And also maybe doing some drills that you think might work, testing them. So that way, you know, you might see, oh, it works. You know, be more creative. Don't always depend on everybody else. Come up with new ideas, new drills, new concepts. Let me ask Tony Klarberg, because you know, I know you. Look, I sat in a clinic and you questioned me one time on base running. I still remember it. That made me better because it made me look into that. So I know you're always thinking for the, you know, what's the better thing. So what's Tony Klarberg done lately that maybe somebody else hasn't done, or maybe it's something you've taken and made it a little bit better for your teams or academy?
Well, I don't think I can put my finger on it, but I'm trying to. It has to sit with me, sort of. It has to. I have to understand it before I teach it. I have to feel comfortable with it. I have to sort of know or have an idea what this is going to do to the player before I start teaching it or do it. So, I mean, we've seen each other at the ABC for many years now. So the first time I went was in 2000. So I've been going for a lot of years, but I don't bring everything over here and start doing it. It's sort of adapting, and it's so many variables. It's what type of facilities you have, what type of equipment you have, what type of players you have, and one challenge can be, I think, maybe more in Europe than in US. I think it's the differences between the number one kid and the other one. I mean, if you have 15 kids, you line them up, it's going to be a big difference between these kids, how they throw, how they hit, how they run, how they move. So you have to adapt your practice to everyone. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges being a smaller sport, especially here in Sweden. But yeah, I try to pick and choose from everyone, and it's what we do. Yeah, what we do. I visited Driveline in Seattle, tied into the ABCA visit. I visited Ron Wolforth in Texas to see what he was doing. So I'm trying to learn and understand myself what's out there, and then I try to adapt. I'm not doing everything Driveline does. I'm not doing everything Ron Wolforth does, but I picked stuff here and there. We do some weighted balls, we do some plyo balls, throws. We do J bands. Alan Jaeger, we do J bands. These drills. We do med ball stuff. Jaeger's shown. We do the long toss. So it's. I think it. If I'm going to do it, it has to make sense in my head, and it has to apply to everything else we're doing. And time-wise, also, are we going to? How much time are we going to spend on this actual piece? We got this much time this week. How much are we going to spend on this? And that's always a continuous like challenge when you're planning how much time you're going to spend on certain things. What's the most important right now in this period of the year, and what's So I would say in the winter months when we're indoors, there's a lot of fundamentals, a lot of, I would say, boring drills, short hops, and all these things. When we get outside, it's more closer to the game-like thing, more team stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that was the answer of the question, but I can't. I don't think I can tell you what to. Yeah, I guess the driveline stuff it's new, but I haven't just copied everything they do. But I think it's interesting what they do, and I try to have it make sense in my head before I use whatever I'm going to use on the kids. So we've started this year implementing more of the plyo balls throws and the weighted ball throws for certain of the players I have. It's not for everyone, so it's just a few of the kids I have that I think is ready for it. So yeah, it's an adaptation, I think.
Cool. I want to welcome John Bonelidge, one of another board of directors, ISG Baseball at Whitewater, head coach of Whitewater, and Whitewater won the College World Series a few times. Outstanding program. Also, check out chat. Stefan, our good friend, mentions Norway, and I want you to read that if you can. I agree with him. I've gone through their Norway program. What a great program. So I think that'll help. But I also want to ask you this. You mentioned, kids playing, you have 15 kids and they're different variants. A lot of coaches run through this, whether you could be even a freshman coach here in the States or even a younger coach has that issue. What do you do with, them playing catch together? How do you, put them together, I guess, and that way they can, not challenge each other, but work together instead of the ball being thrown and the guy misses it and he's got to go run and get it and all that. How do you deal with that?
Well, it was a long time ago since I coached the youth, but I've been coaching U12, U15, U18, and men's teams. So I think when I was a U12, I didn't mind throwing with the kids too. So if there's a kid struggling, I can put more focus on him that day and help him out more and more attention to him. So if there's a kid that's struggling, that's what I would do instead of sitting on the ball bucket in the dugout and watching. I think that's my job as a coach. I interact with the kids, especially when they're young. When they're older, not so much maybe, but especially when they're young. And then I think you can address if there's kids that have problems with their throwing, per se, and if there's several, you mix it up. You take one kid one day and the next kid the next day, or something like that. I don't know. I don't have the solution, Pete.
That's all right. It's a conversation.
Yeah,
you never
I know.
know. Hey, you never know what comes out. Something, that little nugget, guy goes, hey, that's really good.
Yeah.
I like it. So all it takes is one to really, help somebody. It takes
Well,
one thing.
something good's got to come out, because there's no hair coming out, so it's got
That's right.
something's got to come out. So yeah.
Well, the other thing is, and everybody has a challenge with this, and I want to know what you do with it. You talked about the fundamentals. You work on the fundamentals, and then all of a sudden you get to outside, you get into a game, and those fundamentals don't exactly translate into a real game because of the pressure, because of other things. So what do you do, even your academy guys? I mean, you're going to go to these academy tournaments. What do you do to prepare them for those real game situations?
Oh, we try to play inter-squad games, and it's games. I mean, I think it's tough to mimic a real game because everybody knows it's not a real game. So it's just, I mean, you can have competitions, you can have like pressure situations, but it's not gonna, well, that's my experience anyway. You can try, but it's not going to be the real thing until it's the real thing. So I think it's tough. I don't know I haven't managed to figure that out really. But so we play inter-squad games, and sometimes have like challenges, pressure situations. But I think that's what we can do. I think that would be 15 and up. I don't think you would do more like pressure stuff for younger kids, but game-like situations, yes. But it should be, I think you need to have, in general, I think you need to have an environment where it's okay to make a mistake. So that's sort of, I don't know, it goes against what you want to do in a game. You don't want to miss in the game, but if you don't have an environment where they where it's okay to make mistakes. You're not going to make the guys push themselves to their limits. So I think you need to have an environment where it's forgiving and it's okay to make mistakes.
Sure, there's a balance. Obviously, we have to understand. You know, certain kids you can push a little bit at this time, and another time, another kid a little bit more. Everybody's a little different. And that's what's great about a lot of coaches nowadays. They're training guys individually instead of everybody the same.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, listen, your good friend, another great baseball man, Christian Pavia. He mentions, Tony, you mentioned that we need practice and more to develop better athletes. Can you name a few of the most important drills that we as youth coaches in Sweden and Europe need to focus on to get the athletes prepared for the next level?
Yeah, there's one secret drill. No, that's a tough one. I mean, baseball is a complicated game because there's two games in itself. There's hitting and there's fielding, and there's skills involved that are difficult. It's difficult to hit in baseball. It is difficult. That's a difficult skill. So how do you train that? Well, you hit a lot. And then when it comes to fielding, it's movement, it's reading the ball. So I think a lot of it's repetition. Whatever you do, it's repetition. You can't, as a coach, you can't, especially when they get older, you can't expect your players to be good at something if you haven't worked at it. So if your team can't turn the double plays, maybe you haven't spent enough times on turning double plays. I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I think it's moving, how you move. So it's agility. Sometimes it could be strength involved with that because you're not able. Could also be flexibility issues. So it's complicated. I think the younger kids, the best thing is if they do other sports, because there you would get everything. If they go skiing, they play soccer, they play team handball, they play tennis, whatever they do, be active, do ping pong, swimming, whatever it is, that's going to give you the skills to be able to develop in baseball too. But it's hard to copy everything on a baseball practice. But I think it's movement, it's flexibility, and then it's the game itself. So yeah.
You know, another coach, an ISG board member, Pat Doyle, traveled all over the world. You know, he's been on national teams with the Israeli team and with MLB Envoy program, worked with them. I mean, he's done so much in the game around the world. And I agree with him. He says, you're a great student of the game, no doubt about it. Tony Klarberg studies the game big time. And he says, what have been your biggest challenge in getting into info to your players so they can transfer it? And also your biggest success? He threw you a big one there.
Yeah.
He's putting the pressure on.
The biggest challenge was,
he can handle it. He can handle it.
The biggest challenge was the question I got from Pat. No, well, biggest challenge is to move them to the next level and for them to understand what the next level actually is, because we are so far away from the environment you have in college. But so what through my dear friend Pat Doyle, that has helped out tremendously with the academy, with everything, but especially with the college placement program. But in a lot of parts also helped me with my coaching, my development as a coach, being a mentor and a dear friend. Anyway, I think that's a big challenge to move them on to the next level and have them realize what it takes. That's what I think. And then also when they come back, but then it's out of my hands in a way. But tough thing for us when they come back from college is to keep playing. For a lot of them, sort of reach their goal and they come back here, and it's a totally different environment. Being in a college, it's almost pro when you come from a country like Sweden. They're treated like kings. They have several coaches. Facilities are awesome. They play 45 plus game in the spring. They get equipment. It's all big league almost. And then they come back home here, and it's a totally different environment. And it's a challenge, I think, for a lot of them to keep themselves motivated. And some of them might have gotten hurt, like the experience wasn't what they expected, because the competition is tough. I would say one of the toughest sports in the world when it comes to competition, reaching
Tony,
making the roster.
Sorry, talk about
Sure.
the college program. I think that's important, what you do with your kids, where they travel, how you handle all that, and then the success behind it.
Yeah, so already when we started in 06, I had an idea in my head that I wanted to have them move on. I never got the chance to go to college, but I was over in California when I was 22 for 6 months and traveled around and worked out at different schools, but never played at a college or went as a student athlete. So that was in my head already when we started in 06. So being close friends with Pat Dahl and knowing he was the president of the California Coaches Association, I contacted Pat and asked him about, I told him about the idea and asked him about what schools he would recommend. So that's how we got started. And in 09, I think it was the fall of spring of 10, maybe was the first, we did the first trip to California. And the idea is that I bring the seniors from the academy that wants to. They go on a little college tour, and we visit usually 10 to 12 different schools for them to see what it's like. Sometimes meet the coaches, see the facilities, talk to counselors, and just try to get a better picture of what college actually is. And so we've been doing that since 2010. So it's more than 10 years now. And Pat's been a great host and a great mentor and helper and driver and bank. I lost my wallet once, so he was a little bank. He was my private bank for a day. I wouldn't recommend that though. But so through the years, we've had 31 players have gone to college.
Wow.
And that's 48% of the total number of players that have graduated from the academy. So it's a big number. Not everyone have stayed, but to be on that statistics, you have to at least finished one semester. That's how you get on that. So because I think if you've done one semester, you at least experienced what it is. So there's a couple that went home after a few weeks only, but they're not in the statistics. And then there's a few that have made international travel without college. They've gone to South Africa, Australia, and then we have players in Holland and Germany too. So total, if you count in the guys that have gone abroad and college, it's 51% of all the players graduating. So it's basically half. And I would think the majority have that idea in their head. Now I think it's easier for the kids now because they know we have the program. They have the former players have done this, so it's easier to put that in your head. But the first ones that went, that was tough. It was new, and nobody else has done it except a few other Swedes that have done it on their own. But it was more organized. So yeah, so without Pat Dahl, I don't think we would have been that as successful as we have.
Well, I would call that an awesome program, a great program, and certainly not small time, definitely big time, I think. And again, thanks to Pat also. Pat, ABCA Hall of Famer. We've also, I want to ask you this before I get to one of the questions on Facebook. those kids that are going there, you got 48% of them coming back that didn't get, they didn't get picked to play college. What have you seen from them when they come home? Are they more motivated because they see what it takes possibly to get re-signed?
What was that, Pete? Was it the ones that come home?
The kids that come back that did not get picked to go to a college. They're not
Ah.
picked. What do you see from them? Do they get more motivated and work harder? What's the result of that? Because, sometimes you saw those guys didn't make it, but there could be some positives out of there. These guys got a great experience.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we're usually not getting picked. Well, some of them do, like the best ones I have get the attention, and then there's coaches that know or they want these guys, sort of. They reach out to me and say, "Hey, that kid's really good, right?" Yeah, but then there's kids that never get that attention, but they want to go anyway. So then we talk about what school they might be able to make the roster. So then they go and sort of try out. So we've had so in total there's been 48% going to college, and the ones that they didn't go, basically, I would say, and a lot of them have redshirted for a year and then they come back home. But and I think the experience is that, wow, that was tough, but that's what I want them also to. Before we made this trip, I think everybody thought it was almost impossible. So what I want them to do is to get over there, watch practice and see the level that's over there, see what they will face, see the school, meet the coaches, get motivated. So without that trip, I don't think it would ever be 48%. There's a lot of players that decide on that trip, wow, I want to do this. This is great. This is awesome. I want to have this experience. And I think if you look at what we try to do, is we're getting them prepared very well physically. A lot of the guys that have been over there have been top of the teams when it comes to physical aspects. Like
Tony, are you there? A little bit of a setback. We never had this happen. This first time. I think Tony froze. Got cold there in Sweden. Must have been snowing. Hopefully knows how to come back. Hey, I don't know how many shows I've done, and honestly, and I know Mark Fuller's been on a lot of these. I've had, that's the first time that somebody's actually froze. Maybe they cut off the internet in Sweden. Let's see if he comes back. Anybody have this happen to them at all? No? And what to do here? I think he's going to jump right back. Hey, but while we're at it, this is a good time. We've got a bunch of guys here from Europe. Why don't you add something? Come on, we got Richard, and where we at here? Or even our guys with ISG, if you've got something to add, just open up your mic. Be great to hear from you. It doesn't matter who you are. George Applebaum, come on now.
I think one thing for game experience that I've started doing is, especially if you have 13 or 14 players, then you actually divide them into 3 teams and you play a game with 4 or 5 on each team that is hitting, and then the other 2 teams form the defensive team. But they actually compete, all 3 teams keeping score separately.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. What else we got? Anything else? Come on, Mr. Doyle. I know you got a lot of stuff in that memory bank.
Yeah, I know it's fading fast though, Pete. Darn it. But no, I would just say that, the experience I've had in Europe is, Tony hit it right on the head. Number one, you got to play more. You got to throw more, which is tough to do in some countries. And then the piece of developing athleticism is huge, because if you can develop the athlete, you can start to make the transition into the more finite aspects of baseball a lot easier. And so he's done a great job of that. And you talked about physically preparing kids. I've had the experience of knowing quite a few of those kids that have gone on and played in the States, and without exception, every coach that they played for in the States said they were the hardest working kid that they had. They were the hardest working kid on the field and in the weight room, and that they came to them with a really good strength, outlook and how to develop even more. So you take a look at the baseball piece of experience being a little bit lacking, but the other parts of it, the work ethic and the actually, a lot of them said that one of the things about the Swedish kids that they've had is it really improved their team chemistry, because they became quiet leaders in doing the things that some kids kind of scoffed at or looked at as not being important, and realized, hey, wait a minute, if this guy from Sweden can do this, you know what, so can I. And so it really has, there's a lot of spin-offs, a lot of, when you throw the pebble in the water, all those different circles that go out there's a bunch of those that Tony's players have helped the programs they've been involved in. And also, I'm not the only guy. John Volnich is on there. I mean, he's done a tremendous job for Tony at Wisconsin at Whitewater. And so, I mean, he's another guy that I think that should get a lot of kudos for this, because he's really worked his rear end off to not only help players, but to help Tony himself by allowing him to even coach with him. So.
Absolutely. Also, Tony's he was just there recently with John, and John's also had other coaches, that through the EBCA educational program, where they had exchanges with coaches overseas. Has the program, the academy, Pat, or anybody else, as the academy program, not the academy, but the team that goes to, and travels around California and all that with the colleges, has that been duplicated in other countries?
Not to my knowledge. I know that the Swedes do. I know that I know that the Netherlands, they get kids they're doing a much better job of being proactive and getting kids placed in colleges. And now I know that MLB does have they've had in the past anyway, a kind of an elite
European team, right?
Yeah, they bring a European team over to certain different types of tournaments and so on and so forth. And so that has helped also. So, but I think that program, I'm not sure where it is at this point now. They've changed a lot of their international approaches. And so I'm not sure exactly if that is still in place or not. And then the other thing too is with the way the game's going right now, we're not sure what's in place in any part of the game anymore.
Sure. Mark Fuller, I think you're unmiked.
I was just going to mention, we also have Christian here. Christian is still on, and he's involved in the youth programs over in Sweden. And does a very nice job, as do many other players over there. But, it's, I think one thing about Tony, his hard work and his efforts to continually educate himself are very evident. Once you get over there and work with, as Pat has done, some of his players, you can't help but be impressed with the knowledge base they have as players over in Europe. He does a great job, but, so does Terry in Hungary, and of course, George in Germany, and all the other people on here. So yeah, it's great to hear from people like Tony. I don't know if Christian has anything to add about what might be going on at the youth levels, as he shakes his head no.
Yeah, you're putting the pressure on Christian. Mark, there you go. Put a little pressure on him. Love the pressure. Anybody else out there? Anything else you want to mention?
I might have a game. Okay.
Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I might have a game that actually I got it from Sweden. And because I saw them at the youth tournament, and they were hitting these plastic bottle caps, if you can see that, right? And then I showed it to my Latino players, and they told me they play a game called Tapita. I don't know if you know it. It's played 4-on-4 or 3-on-3. You just throw this bottle cap as a skipping stone, and the hitter has to hit it. If you swing and miss, you're out. If you hit it, it's caught in flight, you're out again. And then also the fielders have to stop it or catch it or field it before it stops moving. It's a very fast game. You can play 3-on-3 on a parking lot. A lot of fun, a lot of speed, agility, a lot of hand-eye coordination, and also the body coordination, because these are very hard to hit. So you play 4 or 5 innings, and you can have a big tournament with just one team, no matter how many players you have. It doesn't take too much space. The only advice I would give is to have a coach or somebody who throws the bottle cap with glasses, because sometimes it's hit pretty hard and you don't want anybody to get injured.
Where did George go? George, where you at here? George Applebaum, is he still on? I don't see his name anywhere.
Yeah, I'm still on here.
George, this
I'm
is a
still
great
on, Pete.
time. Great time. Welcome. Great time, because we're almost coming to the end. I want everybody to know about this, because we got guys from Bulgaria, Mexico, other countries also. I want them to know about the EBCA and what you guys have done there. I know ISG obviously is part of that, but tell everybody about the EBCA program. I think it helps educate a lot of coaches.
Yeah, that's true. But thank you, Pete. But before I want to come to that, I want to add something. And Tony mentioned this before. I think the key to keep players in the game is coaching. Actually, we can do a lot of great games. Terry, for example, mentioned the great game. We play that as well. If you have smaller groups and you don't have inter-squad possibilities with 9-on-9, you do that. But the way you find ways for your players, the way you can promote and develop individually your players, you show them that you care, you show them your knowledge, and you talk to them. Tony mentioned this before, that he's taking care about his kids. That's the key point in my opinion, and that's the reason why I believe that coaches development is the key to it. I mean, we mentioned a couple of times that, for example, kids come from other sports and be more athletic than baseball kids. My question is, why is that? And I don't want to get too much into it, but I think in Europe, with all what MLB did for the last couple of years, spending more time and money on the academy programs and trying to get these major league players, we forget sometimes that if we don't have enough players coached by good coaches with a lot of good ideas, with empathy and with knowledge, then we don't have the peak at all. And that's the reason why we need good coaching on every level. And I think this is important, especially for European coaches, European baseball. I think I see the same thing in the US, by the way, with all the travel ball, and every coach thinks he can get his guy to the next level. I think sometimes we have to see, where do they come from? Do they have fun to play the game? Do they learn on the lower level as well? And this is why I think the EBCA is working on a good, is working hard to develop coaching in Europe. That's the bottom line.
And mention the EBCA. What exactly are you doing? You've got the seminar,
well, the
and
EBCA,
a couple programs.
The European Baseball Coaches Association is, beside hosting an annual coaches convention supported by ISG and other great guys, great companies. We're trying to get guys over from the States, but also add some European coaches, come together as coaches, learn from each other. On the side, we're trying to get European coaches over to the States, learn from the best, learn from guys like Pat Doyle, from Vol, Mark, you name it. And we have another program started in Europe where we learn from each other, because sometimes it's better to see, as let's say a guy from Slovenia, to see what is going on in Germany or in the Netherlands, because they have been there 20 years ago. They know what to do and how to reach the next level. So this is something we did in the past, and I'm pretty happy that we're doing it without any support by any federation, whatever, self-financed, and our biggest partner is ISG. That's, without them, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Thank you. And also back is Tony Klarberg from Sweden. And I just want to mention ISG Baseball, started by Bill Arce. That's one of the reasons, Bill, I know had started it, to help coaches at the grassroots level all over the world. We continue to expand. Thank you to all our board of directors that are online. Because of them, we're expanding all over the world, and we just keep trying to expand to try to help, obviously have coaching programs, because exactly what you said, George, if you don't have good coaching, you don't have a foundation. And if you don't have a foundation, a game's never going to grow. I mean, that's just common sense. Everybody understands it. We just need to continue to push it so that way it keeps growing and growing and growing all over the world. Tony, where you at? You there?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it was the Russians that blamed the.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. We just talked behind your back the whole time. So now we're back to normal. No, we had a lot of great things came up. A lot of these guys obviously love you. You've done a great job for the game of baseball, not only in Sweden, but everywhere you made a lot of impact with all these individuals that you come across. So let's, the conversation, I forgot where it ended, but, we just finished talking about DBCA, but one important topic that came up, and you had mentioned it, and George Applebaum talked about it just now, and that was the importance of coaches' education, how important it is in Sweden. And again, just give us an idea. What are you doing to educate your coaches? And possibly, here's another one that we struggle with in the U.S. at the younger levels, at the volunteer levels, is getting coaches to coach baseball. Are some of your players returning? What kind of programs?
Yeah, Federation just restarted an actual coaches training program a few years ago. So it started with like an initial training for anyone that hasn't played baseball, like a basic coaches training course where anyone could attend, like parents that have never played. And I think like it's going to be like three more levels after that. So I think they just started the first level sort of after the basic training, and so that's the challenge, is that a lot of kids that start in any sport, I mean, parents are easily drawn into becoming a coach, and since baseball is so uncommon here, a lot of parents have no idea what it is, so we need to put them through a basic training first, and then they can sort of progress. But I think it's youth level, I think U12, that's where you can manage, I guess. But when the kids get 13, 14, 15, it's challenging, because they expect you to teach them more and more advanced stuff. And if you can't deliver, then it's going to be hard. But I think so that's where the coaching training comes in to help them out. But I think there's a need for it, and hopefully we'll see the next few years will show that it will be an effective program too. But I was going to say, I'm going to say this about myself, is that I think you need to seek knowledge too. It's not like, oh, I'm sitting here and waiting for that coaches training program that's going to come up here in my town.
Good point.
If that doesn't happen, then you got to go explore yourself. So I guess that's what I'm doing all the time. And recently I spent some time up in Wisconsin with Coach Vodenlich at University of Wisconsin Whitewater to learn and also to, test my knowledge where I'm at, and then keep my arm going, throw BP. But yeah, so I think there's tons of stuff you can do if no one else is sort of doing it for you. It all depends on your drive and yeah, what you want to do. And of course, yeah, there's sometimes money involved if you can afford it. But I wouldn't say I'm wealthy. But I don't drink, I don't gamble. I save up money every month to be able to go to ABCA, for example. And then a lot of times on that trip, I try to tie in another visit. Like I said, I visited Driveline, visited 2 years ago, visited TCU baseball, because TCU has showed or made a few videos that are really inspiring. So you wanted to see that place. So I think whatever you can do. I mean, if there's coaches that want to come here and see what we do, they're more than welcome to come. So,
Guys and gals, we are
yeah.
coming to the end here. Just a couple things. One, but right before you broke off, Coach Bill Percy, another ABC Hall of Famer, travel all over the world. He had a question, but before I get to that question, I want to ask you one thing about the coaches, and that is, you know, a lot of your coaches that you're talking about, even in Europe, a lot of them are, like you said, they're volunteers. There's only so many practices they can have. There's only so many fields, so much equipment. You know, they don't have all the things that a lot of coaches are fortunate to have. So what's an important message for all the coaches in that category when they're going to learn something? What's some of the most important things to learn? You can't learn everything. You can't teach everything, and they don't have enough time. So what are some of the most important areas?
Yeah, so I would say number one is one of the best advices I got when I started to coach in 2000. I went to ABCA and ran into Coach Jerry Kindle. Approached me and said, "Hey, I'm Swedish too." That's how I got to know
Yep.
Jerry Kindle, and had no idea who he was. But when we started to get to know each other, I asked him what he would recommend, and he said, just try to be the type of coach that you are, sort of like your personality, that fits your personality. That stuck with me, and that's what I'm trying to do. And what was the question again?
Well, basically to the young coaches that don't have a lot, practice
Oh
time,
yeah,
field,
yeah.
equipment.
I would say it's a process. You are developing as a coach as much as you're trying to develop the players, and you can't expect yourself to know it all to start with. You learn, and it's step by step. So you got to check yourself. See what do I need? What areas do I need to know more about to be able to teach these kids? And then you attack that area, and then the next step, and the next step, and the next step. And I think that's the way it's a process. Because it's, like I said, baseball, it's complicated, especially at a higher level. There's strength and conditioning. It's fielding, it's infield, it's outfield, it's pitching, it's catching, it's hitting, and it's base running, and it's the game, the coaching part of it, the knowledge of the game. And now it's more the technical stuff. It's the spin rates and the tunneling, and it's the plyo balls, and it's so much that you can't expect to know it all. And especially now, you're going to start coaching. There's a ton of stuff. So I would say it's a process. Try to enjoy it. If you're happy going to practice, I guess the kids is going to be happy too. I mean, if you're feeling bad about yourself, you don't know enough, and that's everybody feels that way. I don't feel I know enough. There's more to learn, right? So I think take it step by step. Try to look yourself in the mirror and see what do I need to know more about, and you dig into it and ask questions, go to clinics, go visit somebody else, talk to another coach. Ask questions.
Fantastic. And lastly, with Coach Percy, they just want to know your teams. Are they going to be able to travel outside of Sweden for competition? We don't know yet.
Talking to the wrong guy, I guess.
Well, is the academy planning on going anywhere, or is this everything on hold?
No, we were supposed to go in what was that, April, to Regensburg, but yeah, that was shut down. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Most of the European tournaments are shut down this year, so there's no competition for club teams or national teams until next year. So yeah, that's where we're at.
So most of them will be internal. Each country will have their own competitions only.
Yeah, it looks like it. But some countries already shut down their seasons. I think France and Netherlands. I think.
I know the Czechs are going to start playing.
Czechs are playing. They started last week, I think, if not 2 weeks ago. Swedes will probably start later in June. I think there's some other countries opening up a bit. So.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm going to leave it with this. Give you the last, I guess, last, I almost lost my words here. The last message. Hang on, Richard, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Were you trying to say something?
Yes, I was just about
Go
to
ahead.
tell you that the Czechs are have already 4 games in their leagues. In the
Oh,
top league.
so
And
you
the
had to
youth
top
is
everybody
playing.
already, huh? 4 games?
Yeah, pretty good games, tight games. Today we won 8-7 in the 8th inning, so that was pretty cool. So the league is going on. We are allowed to have 300 people in the venue, like 250 fans plus the teams.
Cool. All right, thank you, Richard. Tony, last message from you to your to coaches. Any last message?
No, I think that what I just recently said is develop. If you want to develop as a coach, it's a process. You take it step by step. You look yourself in the mirror and look at your weaknesses and your strengths, and you build from that.
Fantastic. Great way to end it. Folks, I want to thank everybody for joining the show on Twitter, Facebook. That's Tony Klarberg. Special thanks to Tony, the Sweden Baseball Softball Academy Director. Again, Tony, thanks, man. Really appreciate it. You know, it's been great having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Pete. Thank you.
All right, folks. Again, special thanks to Tony. Special thanks to our producer, Brian Kroc, with the Lineup Media Group. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo with Baseball Outside the Box. Thank you to ISG Baseball for joining us on the international edition of this program. And thank you to all the board directors from ISG who joined us. Thank you to the president of the EBCA, George Applebaum. Thank you, everybody. Remember, this is the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds who love to challenge the status quo. And you guys, the people who join the show, we can't thank you enough. Please spread the show. Let everybody know about it. We continue to do these on Sunday, specifically for international people, international baseball. We want to highlight everybody around the world, some of the best coaches. So remember, have a safe day. Be back on the field soon. God bless you all. And we'll see you on Monday's show. Check it out, Monday. We've got Monday, Wednesday, and Friday shows. Monday, Andy McKay of the Seattle Mariners. Wednesday, Jim Lefebvre, former big league manager. He's outstanding. Both of those guys are great. And Friday will be Fred Clare, World Series GM with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So everybody today in the U.S. and around the world, we'll see you during the week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Tony.
Nice job, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Pika,
Go walk
Hey,
the dog.
hey,